Hello. Hello. Different day again this week. Stuff going on. Work stuff going on. And this week, though, what with everything that's going on in Europe and Ukraine, whatnot at the minute, it made us think about, especially with the dam blowing up and whatnot, it made us think about strength, a show of strength, and the reasons behind it. And what is true strength? And do people who are strong ever really show it? Or are they, people who wander in a room and smash the place up? Are they actually the most scared of us all, and they're showing and smashing things up to make it look like they're tough, but they actually aren't? So we'll be covering all sorts of angles on that this week. So Marky Mark, what's the crack? What's the crack?
The crack is another busy week. I was middle of the week. I was up the Three Peaks again. Interesting bunch.
Same bunch?
Won't mention any
different bunch.
Won't mention any names, but I had. They're all professional referees, and they were doing it for leukemia research. Did really well. I have to say, I might have mentioned during the week about doing a episode on perception of people and how they get a bad rap. And I think referees get a bad rap, and they were a really good crew to be around, really funny, really aware that they have to be very careful about what they say and do because it could get out in the press. But yeah, and then finished off the week by I went away at the caravan on Thursday and came back Monday. Fantastic weather.
Yes.
And I've got a new watch. Can you see my new watch?
Oh, yeah, it's one of them tan watches.
It's one of them new tan watches, top of the range they are.
One of them tan Hoya watches.
I like that. Tan Hoya. Aye. Yeah. Cost me a lifetime, this did. Cost me a lifetime.
Do you know what? Do you not think that's kind of bad? That really all they do is referee a game where people kick a ball around the field, and yet they do out of line, and it's a massive scandal. Oh, get rid of him! Get rid of him! Look at that ref. I mean, do you see that one at that ended up getting chairs and stuff thrown at him at the airport because of some of the decisions he made at the match?
Yeah.
Well, mate, it's a game. Nobody died. Nobody got shot in the face or kicked in the stoots even. It was just the dude went, nah, I think you did that on purpose, or nah, I didn't think you did that on purpose. It's not life. It's a game, right? I think it's a bit unfair to treat people like that because of their profession. I mean, you might be rubbish, you might not be. Fair enough, but physical assault.
You get into the bit about true strength. So as a referee, you have to show true strength, not to respond, not to swear, not to use profanity. Now, when we use that, you know how I've had issues with Mum, and I use a bit of profanity to control her on a continuous basis across 90 minutes and not react. Well, that takes some sort of strength, doesn't it?
It does, or persistence. Persistence and control, I suppose. All forms of control require some kind of strength, I suppose. Do you know, the reason I was thinking about this topic all started when I was watching the news. Talk TV, as usual. And it popped up with this news flash. And I watch a couple of Ukraine podcasts overnight that cover all the different clips from the war and the movements of the lines and this. And I watch a couple of things like that. Jake Broe, if you want to learn a top level view of the news and the interactions and all the bits and pieces, watch Jake Broe on YouTube. It's probably the best summary there is for it on YouTube, and the angle that he takes, what he includes, excludes, and how he explains things, and the news source he uses that Ground News website that shows you the political bias of all the different papers. So he tries to take quite as neutral view as he can get, and then just puts it across this is why we've sent these weapons here, and this is why we're not going to send these. And he gives a really good analysis. It really satisfies my brain. He's a bit of an introvert, so I can really relate. Yeah. He does this once a month Q&A session where you get to know a bit about him. So you should watch it. I watched his analysis of it, and I just sat back. I thought, right, they've blown up this dam.
Who did?
The Rush. Well,
I haven't seen it.
See, this is the thing I was getting to, right? So they blew up the dam. Mm. Then the Russians are saying, "Look at what Ukraine have just done. Look at that." Ukraine's like, "What? We're not even in that area. That's a Russian-controlled part of Zaporizhia. So how the hell could we have done it? Well, you dropped artillery on it, right? So if artillery worked, do you think we would have went through the whole rigmarole with the dam busters, having to find the perfect way to get a bouncing bomb to hit a dam right in the face in order to break it? Like, with the way they're built, everybody knows you can't just drop artillery on a dam to get it to break, because that's you think of the way it's designed, right? Is well they weakened it. Fair enough. There was on the south side of the dam, there was rail tracks and a roadway that goes across the dam to get you north-south, right? So what they did was they dropped a few HIMARS shells on the tracks, enough to break them up so you couldn't use them, right? I think was it 3 or 4 that dropped on there, but that was the only damage. Right, and then the damage was on the track. And when you look at photos of the damage, it was just enough to make sure that the track was non-functional, right? So no. But what they admitted saying when somebody brought up some graphs, I was chuffed when they brought up some graphs, was the water before the dam broke was at its record high. Right, it had never been that high, ever. So it showed you the history all the way back into the early 2000s, and said, look, it's never been this high. It's way beyond, by a good margin, the maximum it has ever been in height. So it starts to look a bit sus, doesn't it? That it's higher than it has ever been by a good margin, and we know, because they admitted this earlier on, that there were mines inside the dam, that they'd mined it in case they ever lost it. And last year they made joking threats on their state TV. Oh, you know what we should do? We should blow up a dam, flood them out, get rid of their power infrastructure. There's just so many different things that all line up. You think, come on. Aside from the fact that they're going to have to clean all that up, the Ukrainians. It's flooded. There's loads of little towns. I say little, some of them are quite large. All the way along the banks of the Dnieper River. And they're completely flooded. Now, some of them are just well underwater. And though that particular reservoir on the east side of the dam feeds irrigation channels on the south side of Ukraine, for farmers to grow crops, and if the level of that drops, it doesn't feed the irrigation channels. And on the other side, the water goes down a purpose-built canal all the way down into Crimea and gives them fresh water, and then it branches off into the southern areas of Ukraine. So it's a source of water, a source of drinking water, it's a source of irrigation water, and lastly, the reservoir also feeds directly into the Zaporizhia power station, the largest nuclear power station in Europe and the third largest on the planet. And it feeds into the cooling, right? So it does have a cooling pond, but obviously the cold water goes in, the warm water goes out. So eventually that water is either going to get too hot or it's going to get so hot that it all evaporates, so it needs to be fed. Now if the level of the reservoir goes below 12 metres, they're not going to be able to pump any water in, and they're going to rely solely on this reservoir. So it could be the largest man-made disaster since whenever, right? Since probably the World War II, because we blew up some dams on purpose in Germany. So The problem with it is that if Zaporizhzhia goes off, the contamination will pass down the Dnieper River into the Black Sea, from the Black Sea eventually into the Mediterranean, and what's one of the largest industries in the Mediterranean? Fishing. And all of the coastal cities that are around there, what with the poisoning and the death of all the fish, the water itself, and then the towns, and then infertility comes, and then cancers, and God knows what else. So it leads to all sorts of stuff. So it led me to this question that, why has he done it then? Let's assume this is all Putin, and I think it's a safe assumption. But let's assume it's all Putin. Why has he done it? What's he got out of it? What's he got? Like, it's not. You could argue that it's a strategic target because it's part of their energy infrastructure, but at what cost? At all the lives that it's going to displace and/or extinguish, and the chance of the power plant going off it, and of course he wants to be able to keep his hands on Crimea because that's where all the natural resources are under the ground that haven't been dug up yet. All the fossil fuels just happen to be around that area of the Black Sea, off the coast. But he wants to keep that bit, but he's cut off his own water supply. What's the crack with that? Did he think, they'll not think it's me because I've heard Crimea. You see, that's me. That's my plan. Right? I start to think, well, what? Is he trying to look hard? Like trying to look proper nails? Like, I'm just going to blow this stuff up just as a show of strength. Is that what he's trying to do? Because some of these things that he's blown up and things that he's attacked make absolutely no sense. Is it that his army's accuracy is so bad that it hit that hospital, or did he hit it on purpose? And it all seems to have this common thread of a show of force and a show of strength, and look at how amazing we are. Oh, well, what we'll do is we'll knock the thing flat. Oh, but we'll build it back up again the way we want it afterwards. Have you seen some of the cities? Nobody's living in Vuhledar anymore. No one's living in Bakhmut anymore. No one's living in any of them ones around the front line. They're absolutely smashed to bits, especially after they used, which is a war crime by the way, used incendiary rounds. Because it just burns everything. It's just like mercury flares. Just slowly falling on the ground, it sets everything around just on fire. And he's used some of those in towns that still have people in them. And at that point it becomes a war crime, because you cannot involve civilians in your war. You should only be attacking combatants, right? So combatants on either side. So I'm that's when I reached out to you and said, are there different types of shows, different ways of showing strength? Do they have different motivations behind them? So is it that he's walking in and smashing the place up to look nails because actually he's super paranoid, he actually feels insecure, and then when you look at the way that he rules the whole country with a bit of an iron fist, being a dictator, is that the whole reason he does it? Is it some sort of syndrome he's got, like a complex? He needs to feel like he's the one in power, that he's got all this power, that he's proper nails, that he's got people under his thumb, even though at the minute he's in a bunker. And every time he has someone from another country visit him, he sits at the end of this ridiculous table where he's literally feet away from the person. And if you look at him when he's attending, presuming it's not his body double, when you see him actually attend an event, all of his officials are standing away from him. No one but maybe it's the president of this country that's visiting him can actually stand next to him. Everybody else has to stand away from him at a distance. So he's clearly, he's not wanting to be taken out. Is it worth it? Is it worth it? Is all that stuff he's done worth it to get to the point where now he has to live in a bunker and rule remotely? Is it worth it? All that money, all the things he's done? Is that real strength, or was it all this time? Is it weakness that has driven everything that he does rather than strength or fear? Because I've met some strong people, and you find out they're strong by accident quite often. Like the way they react to an event. Somebody kicks off and they just get up and sort it out. Is that strength, or is it a lack of fear? I find some of this stuff quite hard to define. So I'm wondering, is it the way my brain works, or is it actually hard to get your head around?
No, I think you're right. If you take, give me a sort of another parallel when you sort of mentioned there about the bunker there, and you go back in history, and another certain gentleman from 39 to 45, and I happened to watch a couple of clips yesterday from the Battle of Britain. Now, Hitler decided he was going to show his immense strength through the air in the Battle of Britain, and as a way of making a statement to basically invade the UK.
He got his ass kicked.
What he didn't realise is that the true strength was in the RAF, and within a very short space of time, the German army postponed their invasion of Britain.
Yeah, I was watching a few, these animations where people say, "Oh, the whole of the war animated in 10 minutes," and you can watch all the borders change and the whatnot. And I was reading the little things along the bottom, so this is what's happening here, this is what's happening here, and it just kept saying, postponed indefinitely. I was like, right, this is where the doodlebugs came from, wasn't it? Because he couldn't get in, so he just sent random bombs over, flying bombs, to try and just strike terror. And then somebody said, does that not draw a parallel to something that's happening right now? Blowing stuff up from afar, launching missiles into populated areas, blowing up churches and blowing up schools, firing directly into Kyiv, where there's still thousands of people living. Do you not think there's a parallel there of trying to strike fear and to bring them down from the inside? You'll make them give up.
But how do you might be super powerful like Putin is, but when you have a will to survive, like Ukraine and like Britain did, when you have a will, that's very, very difficult to break that will, And we'll fight them on the beaches, we'll fight them in the air, we'll fight them everywhere.
I think that's why Churchill ended up so famous, because he actually spoke with the voice of the British people. That we don't get scared easy.
And is it Lewinsky? What's he called? Lewinsky, the Ukraine leader.
Oh, you mean all I can think of is Monica Lewinsky now that you've said that. It's not.
I was gonna say. I was gonna name a famous footballer from Germany, which would have been wrong as well. But when you saw
it's Vladimir Zelensky. Or Vladimir.
That was pretty close.
Yeah, Lewinsky.
Yeah.
Lewinsky. He hasn't been.
Monica.
Aye. He hasn't been leaving stains on anyone's dress.
No, I saw that. That was a good one.
Another president.
Yeah, it's red wine. Yeah.
Yeah. So Zelensky.
Yeah. So and when you look at him as sort of the sort of Churchill sort of icon,
and he was a comedian on TV.
Yes.
Pretending to be a president at one point. People seem to forget.
It just gives them even more sort of international power. You can see the sort of support coming in now, the type of support. So you're not with immense power that Russia have. I don't think you're going to break that will. And what are we? After the summer, we're heading back into the winter. So does your tactics become even more dirty because you're not breaking that will?
That's the thing. The last winter, he honestly thought he was going to starve them out, freeze them out, destroy all their power infrastructure, stop them from putting their heaters on, stop them from being able to cook and get warm. And and have their fridge and their freezer and all that kind of stuff on. No, I'm just going to destroy all that. So what happened? A bunch of them just started making and buying generators, important generators. And the speed that they've fixed some of their power substations and getting some of their power stations back online is incredible. When you've got a motivation like they have, it's indomitable, isn't it? They've got this indomitable will, and I think there may have been a very short window of time when he could have put a crack in it. But I think that time has long since passed, and now that they know that everyone's backing them as well, that we're all backing them, we were first through the door to something Boris did. First through the door to say, right, you can have all this stuff, off your pop. We're in, we're all in, and we don't care what any other country says. That's the way we did it. He didn't care what anyone else thought. Some of the other, apart from Poland, who have been amazing. Like France and Germany in particular were humming and hawing. Oh, I don't know, should we get involved in that? Britain just went, what do you need? Here's some stuff and things. We've been the first to do each of these things. First to send them artillery. First to send them these Storm Shadow long-range missiles. First to send them guns and bullets and money. We led the way, and then America followed. But America followed on purpose, because they were tired of being called the world police. So they waited for someone else to jump in and take the lead, because they're kind of a bit they're kind of a bit miffed of always being the one that has to jump in. Do you remember that movie Team America World Police with the puppets? Well, that was taking the mick out of the fact that, America is always jumping in and saying, oh, come on, can you come and sort this dictator out? They're tired of doing it. So they've started out, Joe Biden in particular has started out with Europe saying, you need to start stepping up and finding out who amongst you is a leader, like which country amongst you is going to take the lead. Of course we did, as we always do, as we've done before. We went, I don't care what you say, we're making a decision, we don't need to wait for you. Started sending stuff over, and we've been sending more stuff over, and then of course everybody else followed. We sent these really long range Storm Shadow missiles, helped them attach them to their old planes. And then the French went, oh, we've got a version of that, we'll send it. Oh, Germany, we've got a version of that, we'll send it. You've got countries with next to no money sending whatever they've got. Or you can have our planes that we bought ages ago if you can fix them. Or here's a bunch of our troop carriers. They're a bit old, do you want them? And just chucking stuff, or whatever they can give. That for me is strength. That knowing that we might face a cost, even as a country, politically, for helping them. We just went, you know what, screw you. You should follow us. And they did. They just cracked on. Boris waltzed in, first leader on the ground from another country. You alright? What do you need? Right. I'll go and see if these other people are going to come along and follow. As opposed to countries like China and Russia, who I know they like to dominate. They like to govern everything that's going on, and you can only control so many variables, right? I know these dictators try to control all of them, all aspects, and what gets said. Like state-controlled TV, for example. China and Russia are the same. I mean, China even has a social app where you get social points. And if you've been a bad boy, there's certain products that they stop you from buying. Because the currency is state-controlled, so you can walk into a shop, tap your phone on the thing, and it'll just go, no. Oh, but I've got money. Yeah, but you're not allowed it. You're not allowed alcohol this month. I didn't know that. I was like, really? Yeah. Yeah, you can have social standing. And then, of course, when Jeremy Clarkson went across, controversial figure, I like him. He was driving this car, and every so many feet there was just this flash, and he started joking about it. He said, look at that. And on every so many yards, there's a gantry across the motorway with cameras all the way across it. Across every lane, taking a picture. Where you gone, where you going, where you been. It's crazy. Does that not develop into paranoia rather than a show of strength? Is that not what that is? That you've got yourself into a position, you got yourself there without being voted there, you're not quite sure if anybody wants you there, so you try to make sure that you always stay there by tightening your hold, ever tightening your hold, making it tighter and tighter. Eventually that's got to break though, right? I mean, it looks like paranoia
It's
to
like
me.
three basic human options, isn't there? There's fight, flight, or freeze. And he's quite. I mean, by all accounts, he's not in the best of health, is he? So maybe he feels like he's got to continue to show his strength because he's not in good health.
But is that not because he's weak? He's like a person with a big mouth. You say, oh, they're all mouth and trousers. He's all bark, no bite. Because there's someone who's truly strong, do they really need to prove it? In these ways, in such elaborate and huge and noticeable ways. We don't. As a country, we don't. And yet we're respected on many world stages in many different forums as a with the history that we have and the things that we've achieved and things we've given up and let go since. And we're not an empire anymore, but we were. We've smashed quite a bit of the planet in over the years. Some of it in the name of religion, unfortunately. But we did well. Industrial Revolution. Look at that. Look at what we did for industry. Majority of it started here, right? So we've gained respect. So we have that strength. But I feel like it's a silent strength. Like, you don't want to mess with him, mind. You've never seen him in a fight. You just get this feeling. You don't want to mess with him. You really don't.
No, there's something about you, when you meet certain individuals and you just look at them and you go, I'd never argue with them.
Yeah, isn't there a presence? Like, even Tyson.
Not even if they're built, just the presence.
Yeah, Tyson Fury has both. I mean, yes, he's got this physical presence, but there's something about him that he's got a gentle soul, but he won't tolerate any rubbish. Right? You wouldn't mess with him. There is an air about certain people.
So I like the boxing analogy because one of the things I noted was so Mike Tyson was ferocious fighter. Yeah.
Pitbull, wasn't he?
In one of his infamous fights, he bit his opponent's ear off.
Mad. Yeah, he's an intelligent man, right?
Yeah.
I've seen him in interviews. He's pretty intelligent, right?
Yeah.
He's not. He looks like an animal in the ring, but he definitely isn't. So he knew what he was doing when he did that, right?
Yeah, I think it was a weakness. I think he realised he was in danger of getting beat, and he went to human basic instinct of, right, what can I do? Well, I'm in the clinch, I'm gonna bite his ear, and try and get into his psyche a different way, because that's when you're not working with your fists, so you're starting to use your mind then.
So is that a character flaw? Did that one moment bring out this character flaw that perhaps he didn't know he had?
Well, I just think ultimately we're all flawed in different aspects. It's just do you press the right button to bring it out? And on that day, I would say, Evander Holyfield brought out that animal segment in him, and he realised he was struggling, so he did something totally against the rules.
But did he build himself up into a place where he thought he was invincible, and then suddenly in that fight he started to realise that he isn't, which created a fear response, and he needed to lash out?
Yes, I honestly believe you're right in that. Also, that the guy who was fighting was considerably smaller than him, had came up the weights, had built himself up, so he was probably perceived as a complete underdog. But he just used his brains rather than his brawn.
Effectively, a bit more spirit.
Yep. So actually making him stronger than weaker. So he's stronger in the brain when he's weaker in power, which made him stronger.
So he found the right way to compensate for, which is what a fighter should do, right? You should acknowledge your weaknesses and know how to fill them in or fix them.
Well, I mean, when you think about it, the ultimate art of boxing is to hit and not get hit. So your job is to hit but not get hit, and that's where that particular boxer was really good at hitting and not getting hit. Therefore, Mike Tyson's frustration continued to grow because he couldn't hit him, he couldn't get to him. And then he thought, right, well, what can I do? And then I remember watching that fight live, and I remember even seeing him spit his ear across the ring. It's just flipping horrendous, you know.
What frame of mind do you have to? I mean, I'm trying hard not to see parallels between that and what we're seeing over in Europe, and that it's lashing out. You know, saying, no, hey, blow that shit up. Blow it up. Get rid of that.
You can sort of see how, when your tactics aren't working, you can sort of see how, you mentioned their war crime. Now, is it very easy to tip into that balance? Do the SAS, do our guys, do they tip, you know, when you talk about waterboarding and all that sort of stuff, is it easy to tip into that?
Well, you could argue that there are certain conventions and laws and whatnots and exceptions like terrorism laws and all of this that then make it not a war crime, if you know what I mean. Like it then becomes a legal interrogation method because there's a dirty bomb somewhere in a stadium, so we have to get this information out of them. Oh, but we all know that torture doesn't work, that what you end up getting is that person will say anything to make you stop. So we know it doesn't work, so you kind of get it out of them that way. Oh, but blah, 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 blah. So it's... We know... I think we all know, we all acknowledge in the back of our minds that around the world there are things going on that are never in the papers. People disappearing.
Yeah.
Disappearing in ways that look this way, but that's all staged. That this person was going to go and do this. We'll never know that. We can't know. If we knew everything, the place would be in a constant state of terror across the entire planet, right? Because there's dark in all of us, and there's
well, yeah.
You know,
I watched a little bit of a documentary about JFK, and basically all the witnesses. You know, what was it? There was an interview with Lee Harvey Oswald where he was the first words out of his mouth were, "I'm a patsy." Now, why would you say you're a patsy? Why would you just not say, "I'm innocent"? But he said, "I'm a patsy." So the story goes that he was supposed to be picked up by somebody, and they didn't turn up, and that person that was supposed to, that flight that was supposed to come in to collect him, that pilot was mysteriously killed. And anybody else around that sort of scenario who said anything, as you say, mysteriously disappeared or died of something. So he never actually said, "I'm innocent." He just said, "I'm a patsy."
That's an interesting choice of words, isn't it? That some people would just disregard, wouldn't they? Oh, well, of course he'd say that. No. Why that particular word? Why not just say, "I'm innocent, it wasn't me, I wasn't even there"?
He never said I'm guilty, I did shoot him. He never said I'm innocent. He said I'm a patsy. So he basically saying, I know I shot him, but I wasn't the only one.
Oh, I'm taking the fall for this. Basically what he's saying.
Because somebody was supposed to meet me. He had this reliable source. He was building the documentary about the conspiracy on JFK, you know, where they made the big movie. And this was this pilot that was supposed to meet him and pick him up and take him away. That pilot basically confirmed that he was supposed to fly in, but then mysteriously got, bumped off, as they say.
I didn't know about that bit.
Yeah, I'm forgetting who. I think it was a TikTok thing I saw. It was, what's that famous American interviewer with the long hair called? He's got a very distinctive accent. Quite old now.
With the long hair.
I was going to say, sounds like Weinstein, but not Weinstein. Anyway, he was interviewing somebody in relation to that documentary, and how basically everybody around the documentary is suddenly dead.
Interesting.
Yeah, but then again, you saw it. I was, you get into power. I was thinking, so. What strength does it take? In the Bible it says we have to turn the other cheek. So is that a level of strength, and at which point does turning the other cheek become? It's because it was perceived as a cowardice, wasn't it?
This it's a delicate measure, that, isn't it? That sometimes you really need to put someone in their place, and that takes strength to turn around and tell someone to stop. Stop doing that. It takes a bit of strength to do that, right? But at the same time, it can take strength to just let someone make their own mistake and to say nothing.
Yeah.
Turn the other cheek, someone's hit you in the face and you're not going to hit them back. Is that strength or is it weakness? Or is it fear?
I watched. I was trying to look for it before the episode of I couldn't find it of Robin Williams, where he just said, when you come up against somebody like that, just look at them, smile, and walk away. He said it's the best response you can give them.
Oh, like something.
I try to look.
You know something they
well,
don't.
I just know you're an idiot. You know you want me to respond, and I'm not going to respond. I'm just going to smile at you and say, I know what you are, and good day and goodbye. And I'm moving on, and I think that's sort of the same analogy as turning the other cheek is it takes greater strength to not do anything and turn the other cheek and say, go on, do it again, because all you're doing is hurting me physically, but I'm not letting you affect me mentally.
So then the aim of them was to in some way have some sort of dominance over you, or to leave a lasting mark. And if you can show, well, there's no lasting mark here, well, the bruise will go away, and you just walk off. Yeah, you've left zero impact on my life.
Yeah, we all know internally. If we've turned the other cheek, we all know that we would all struggle with that, but we struggle with it in private. We don't let him see it. So it got me into things like we all met people, and when we see their body language basically says "F you." You look at them and you think, this is not going to be a nice interaction with that person.
The arms folded in the meeting room.
Yeah, the bit about where the arms folded, I'm strong, you're weak. They come in for the maybe a lot of the politicians, they come in for the handshake, they bring you right in, they squeeze your hand, and they say, this is me, this is me. And I just think with people like that, I just like,
that's again, I keep dragging it back to this, maybe I've got an issue, but I keep bringing it back to this is CEOs as well, all over in it. It's competition over the best handshake, and it's one of the things I found some of them mention, if you've got a really bad handshake, I've heard that mentioned in a meeting, that they met so-and-so, so we had this really limp, there's nothing worse than a limp handshake, nothing worse than, I mean, I get it, it feels weird when someone, it's like they won't engage with you, they'll give you a hand rather than shake your hand. What's that about?
Western society that create, I don't know where the handshake originates from, but obviously, we've been to Thailand. We know you don't do handshakes. You wire them. So you do the Saudi cap, you do the hands together. Yeah. That's the handshake. It's not that physical touch that way. So somebody created that.
There's a personal
that handshake.
There's a personal space thing over there, isn't there? As a sign of respect.
Yeah. And there's the recognition is who was perceived as the senior, wise second. So the junior, because there is this hierarchy thing in Thailand. So if I was junior, mostly in age. So if you're young in age, you wife first, the senior wife second. And I always got it wrong. It was quite embarrassing because they were embarrassed because they didn't get the chance to wife first.
Right. Is that what you call it? Why?
Wying, yeah. It's in Thai. It was called wying.
So you would have to know when to wait, because that would then take away the opportunity from them to show you some respect. So you have to stand still and wait for it to come.
Yeah, and what the Thais normally did was that they would why first, and then the ones that understood Western culture would come in for a handshake after that, But you're right. We put so much weight on a handshake, and I was asking this question of a group I did the other day. So the handshake is, and we want a decent handshake, and I said, at which point is it okay to clasp their other hand and say, I'm with you. I'm with you. Where you put your. I tend to, if I want to really make an impression on somebody, as I go in I put the second hand on top of their first hand and I say, I'm with you. You're all right with me. So, and I was asking them what the perception there was like. Oh no, you've really got to get to know them before you put the second hand on them. And I was like, all right, okay.
Yeah, but isn't that a symbol of reassurance? So is it not context?
For
is
me,
it not context dependent?
Yeah, I thought you're right. I think I'm just saying to you, look, I'm not in this power struggle, and it's really more about the emotional side with me. So I'm giving you two hands on top. You can trust me. I'm protecting you around that hand. I'm just protecting you, and I'm just saying, you don't need to worry about me. Don't worry about me. I'm not interested in that manly stuff.
I'm not sure how I'd react. If I'm honest, I don't think that's ever happened.
Yeah, it just. I think it was. I think it was TT. I think TT is the first person I sort of remember doing it. Thomas Tubo, the sort of vice president that we had,
Yeah.
and he did it, and I was just like taken aback by it, and I felt emotionally good. The fact that he did it, I just felt good.
It is giving something of yourself, isn't it? In that moment, like he's kind of rather than kept you at a distance and given you, he's leaned forward, brought himself in, his hand over the top.
Yeah, I knew in the organisation he was a highly powerful person, but in that second, he made me relax.
Isn't that akin to the thing you mentioned last week with the soldier and the kiss on the cheek, that you step down out of your role of power for just one moment to show that you're on the same level, just for that split second, whatever it is, before you then step back up and go and execute whatever you're going to do next.
With people like TT and Carsten, what would I have done for them because of that?
Oh yeah,
I'd do anything.
Oh, we went to the ends of the earth for stuff that Carsten wanted, and we didn't mind doing it either. I didn't second guess any of it.
Because exactly what you just said, Simon. They didn't talk like CEOs. They just talked like me and you.
They did. They did.
And if you want to send a major lesson out to CEOs, get to know your people and be on their level, because you'll get more from them.
Yeah, and I honestly felt like he was the kind of guy that worked his way up. I mean, obviously he had a very red personality, right? Especially them red jeans he wore in the office, and he totally sold it. Even if you told him they looked rubbish, he would have went there and wandered off with a smile on his face, like there, says you.
So
walked off. But
here's an interest.
Huh?
You got me thinking about an interesting dynamic on him, because I wrote down fake weak people, fake people who perceive themselves as strong, and I wrote down the phrase "all fur coat, no knickers." So they've got money, but they basically can't afford to live, and that it's a perception of power and keeping up with the Joneses. But where does it's the funny? We won't go into the story, but where does the Maserati come into this? So you know what I mean, don't you? So where does the status of power in having a Maserati? Is it because you can have a Maserati, or is it because that shows you how powerful I am that I have a Maserati?
That's like you with your expensive trainers, isn't it? It's like
it's
nothing. Yeah. It's nothing to do with other people. You want you've got your sandals on.
So what are these expensive sandals are called? They're called Birkenheads, and they cost 100 odd quid. Jesus. And I got these for 15 quid, and they look exactly the same.
Who's spending that on a pair of sandals?
Yeah, you Birkenheads. You go there, and you'll not get any change out of 100 quid for a pair of them sandals. Yeah, wow. And that's the bit. Is it the fact that I'm okay? I said to you last week, I don't really care what people say about my clothes and my shoes and my hair. I don't care anymore. And is that a show of strength or weakness?
for me, it says that you've accepted and worked out what matters and what doesn't, and you're actually perfectly content, regardless of any opinion. Like, I'm actually pretty sure of what I think of this, and I'm prepared to back it up. You know, somebody contests it. Why don't you? Well,
do I have contradictions? Absolutely,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. Look at some of these books I've got on the shelf. You know, maybe I haven't read some of them. Okay, I'm not perfect. You know, do I buy the odd pair of Nikes? Yes. What do I buy them for? Well, number one, they're comfortable and they protect my ankles, which is what shoes are designed to do, protect you.
Yeah, but there was a guy on, I can't remember which one it was that he used to work for. It could have been Nike. Could have been. Even Steve Kramer's said this before. His wife used to work in my middle school, actually, back in the day. Yeah, she used to bring in all sorts of Nike stuff for the class. So, you know, at Christmas and Easter, she used to bring all kinds of rubbers and pencils and stickers and all sorts, and we're sat there across the room going, dicks, look at them with all their free stuff. Because obviously they had sponsorships and that back in the day. But even he said, look, there comes a point where maybe you spend, maybe it's 120 quid. Beyond that, there's no improvement in the trainer. Yet, there are people out there that will spend 200 quid. And why do we put trainers out for 200 quid? Because people will buy them. That's the only reason they're there, because people think, no, I have to spend a minimum of this on this product, because I need to feel like I've got this top of the range, named after some basketball person, or after some football person, or something. No, the boots, my boots, or cleats as they call them in the US, which is, feels weird, that. The football boots. I need to have the ones that are Beckham such and such, and they're like some mad amount, but the technology in them is the same as the guy stood next to you who spent 120 quid and you spent 300 on yours, and yet yours will last just as long as his. They give you all the same advantage. Oh, I've got these Predator boots.
How the hell do you manage if you've got kids going through that phase? You know, bloody hell.
Look at Andy. Look at Andy, and his Lacoste. These Lacoste shirts. You remember that?
I do.
Aye, you wouldn't buy it. What else would he? No, I like me Lacoste shirts.
Yeah.
You know, I can afford it these days. I'm like, well, is that a reason though? Well, because it's a symbol that I've reached a thing, you know, and it shows everyone, look, I've got the Lacoste badge right on there. I said, well, isn't that what it's about though? That the label's built up a certain. I mean, Pandora. You remember? Have you seen the adverts? Have you seen the adverts lately? What did Pandora say they would never do? 2-for-1s. Discounts. Discount schemes. What are they doing now? Buy 2, get 1 free.
Bog off.
They've got loads of it. I looked on the town. Hold on. What? Is that real? Because we used to see them offers flying around, and it was actually resellers buying the stuff in, then putting up their own website. You remember that really big customer? He put up his own website and his own web store where you could buy Pandora online, but he was actually a customer that we used to ship to. I can't remember what his name was now, but he had his own. He was
the guy in Durham.
I think it was, and he had his own web store before Pandora had a web store, and you could actually buy all this stuff through his website.
John Greed.
Aye,
Yeah.
That's the guy. That's the guy.
He made a fortune. He made a fortune before Pandora even thought about doing it, didn't he?
Right, but look at what brands do. No, brand controls, like making sure that this glass isn't sat next to that person when they're on TV, because then by association we'll pick whoever he is will rub off on our brand. All of that stuff. It's all about. You see this little badge I've got on my shirt? It's a sign of status. Status is a sign of strength and wealth. I'm like, fashion to me is. I'm willing to accept that it's an art form, right? That some of the stuff you see is not meant to be worn. It's meant to be an expression and an art form. I'm willing to accept that. But oh well, are you going to buy a Vivian this and so and so that, a Jimmy Choo shoes? Really though, do they last any longer? The only reason they do is because you never wear them because they cost a fortune.
You're afraid to wear them?
unless you've got tons of money and £2,000 on a pair of shoes is the same as 20 quid for someone else. Do you know what I mean? At that sort of psychological level.
You bought them last week, right? And you've got 2 weddings come up. Yeah? Mm-hmm. And the right-minded people would say, well, they're really nice shoes, I'll wear them for both weddings. But no, I can't be seen in them two times in a row.
That I don't get. Oh, I can't be seen in them twice. Do that on the news. Oh, look at what Princess so-and-so was wearing this time. She can never wear that again. Or she can never be seen.
In this current environment, would you get more credibility for wearing them 4 or 5 times than you would wearing them once? You would now.
The amount of hand-me-downs I got growing up from aunties I'd never met. Some of them were brand names as well, and they just got handed down. I was like, well, because they're still good. They're still good. They're still in good nick. These are good quality things.
Well, Ray must have had a terrible time because I mean, the hand-me-downs. Obviously, I was the tallest, and he's probably. We were having this discussion about stuff from our childhood, and he was like, I can't remember half of it, and probably he was psychologically scarred because he got my underpants or something. I don't know.
The only thing that growing up we ever got that was sort of a premium thing or seen as a premium thing was me nana, me dad's mum. Was it every year or was it changing schools anyway? She always bought our shoes, always. So we'd go up to town with me nana and we'd go to Clark's Shoes.
Yeah.
Because she wouldn't let us wear anything else. So we always had our good shoes. Our good shoes, the school shoes, were always Clark's shoes. We always wore Clark's, and she always paid for them. And they weren't cheap. They weren't cheap back in the day.
Well, they're bloody not.
But the difference with them is they were actually good shoes.
Yeah.
And as a result, we don't have squashed toes and, dodgy looking feet because she bought us some proper shoes as we were growing up and shoes we could grow into that actually fit properly. So there comes a point where I think there's a difference between like a premium product and an expensive product. I think, but sometimes premiums are, oh well, this is all about the status of owning it. There was a guy I worked with. My last permanent job, he used to come in with he'd get all his stuff delivered to work because it was easier than having it, sent to home, and he spent a lot of time at work. And he'd often come upstairs with these boxes and open them up, and all the lads would gather around looking at these shoes, and they're all like Nikes and Pumas. Oh, I've got these. How much were they? 240 quid. Shut up. You spent 240 quid on one pair of shoes? Aye. But they're good though. You can imagine me. I had to tell him, once you spent 120 quid, the rest of it's just like there's no difference. Yeah, I was met with some silence. I was kind of discreetly shunned out of standing around the desk. Do you know what I mean? I was welcomed away. But I don't know. I don't think, for me, it doesn't show strength. For me, it makes you look materialistic, and perhaps a little shallow, and that there's a gap in your character somewhere, or that you're living your life for other people rather than yourself. Right? You're doing it for someone else. I don't understand why you would wear something because of what somebody else thinks of it. I mean, obviously you're not going to smear it in crap and go outside. I mean, that opinion you want to be taken note of, right? But wearing a label or not wearing a label, I'd love us one day to end up on the red carpet and turn up in a suit from Matalan.
Yeah. Second hand.
Yeah. I love that, and everybody else is rocking up in all this handmade stuff. And my sleeves are halfway down my hands. It doesn't fit properly.
Yeah. You just made me think there about another level of strength, showing vulnerability. And I don't mind showing vulnerability.
That's been a bit of an odd issue for me, that it sometimes takes time, especially given that I was fine with giving it out at the start and got
Burnt.
too many times that actually I went completely the other way, which is often what happens, once bitten, twice shy, all that kind of stuff. So I'm gradually working my way back to the middle and trying to find where that middle point is, or at least giving people I really should trust by now benefit of the doubt, and at least giving it to them.
Yeah.
So I'm better at that. So yeah, it can be. I see the value in showing vulnerability, especially to those that matter, and that in itself, I think, is a certain amount of strength that you're willing to give that up, right?
I think what I got out of this, Simon, was that there is no normal when you talk about power and strength. There is no normal. There's just how we perceive it, isn't it? As it tends to be with any discussion.
There is. I've always felt this.
There are some extremes, though. There are some extremes, though.
Yeah, it does seem that there are just so many variables in it that you cannot just say, right, well, this is the point where strength becomes this and weakness becomes this. It's like, well, out of context, it could look like this or it could look like that. But one thing I feel really sure, 60-40, 70-30, that the things that are happening over in Ukraine, some of them just don't need to happen. When you think about it as a war, some of those things don't need to happen the way they're happening. So there has to be some other motivation behind it. And say, oh, well, he's just evil. He's just evil. Well, no, he's clearly, look, he's worked in Russian intelligence for I don't know how long. And he's worked his way up to this. He's schemed his way up to that. He's clearly an intelligent individual, right? So everything has a purpose. I know he might surround himself with some idiots that make daft choices, but then they tend to disappear, right? So how many people have fallen out of windows in the past year, right? So well, they have literally. Oh, he fell out a window. There's all sorts of accidents happened in hospitals and hotels and whatnot, right? When you go against the grain or you make a mistake. So he's the kind of person that cleans up after himself. Or if something doesn't go his way, he's like, well, the best way to make sure that doesn't happen again is just to get rid of the person that did it. And he's not afraid to do it. But is he afraid? That's the point. That was kind of the point I was making. He's not afraid to bump him off. Well, but is he though? Is that not the reason he did it? Because he is afraid. That he's sitting in his bunker saying, oh, I can't have that person working against us. Get rid of them. Or is it, I cannot have you working against me. You're out the door. If that was true strength, you wouldn't kill them, right? You'd ship them off somewhere. Put them in a gulag. That's what, I don't know. It doesn't look like true strength to me. It really doesn't. Some of these unnecessary things, it looks like a show of weakness.
We won't find out.
Probably not. Probably not. There's too many parallels between that and World War II. There really is in his tactics and who he is.
You're right. He can easily make them, and then we just know at some point this ends and he's gone, isn't it? That's what happens.
Yeah. I think the major hope is that there'll be some form of uprising or rebellion of some kind, and of course we've seen some of that all in Belgorod or Bilhorod at the moment, where the Russian freedom movements have just started taking over parts of the town and the city, and they're just working their way. And has he got rid of them yet? No, they've been in there for days. They're still there. So what did he start doing? Dropping artillery shells on it, on his own town. He evacuated it. They started, well, the local government started getting people out And he just said, whatever the cost. And they just started bombing it. When a man's military plans haven't changed in decades, and all they are is flatten it, then throw as many people at it as possible. If you look at his population statistics, he's got this great big bulky bit in the middle at the 40s and 50s, and it just tapers down because he just doesn't have enough. And if you look at the top, when you get into sort of the 80s, there are 2.9 million women at that age, right? There's 900,000 men. Now, if you take that all the way back to when those people were young, it's around about World War II. Because all he did was throw people at the problem, and we know that's never the solution. Even in business, that's never the problem. That's never the right or long-term solution, but he just chucked people at it, and you can see it reflected in all of his statistics. He's not replacing his population, and he knows this. He's been abducting kids and people from Ukraine and taking them back into Russia, and he's put them into these schools where, in inverted commas, where they've been taught how bad Ukraine is and how it's full of Nazis and how you should be proud of your motherland and all of that stuff. Anybody starts saying motherland and fatherland, you've got to start worrying, right? So there's all sorts of complex issues behind it, but at the top, I think, is just a guy who never had real power because he never had anyone behind them. He had them in his grasp rather than following behind him, right? I think there's a difference. Yeah. Strength from a following is different from strength from an iron grip. Because eventually you can't hold a grip forever, right? Your fingers will get tired. Just to follow on with the analogy, people start breaking out. What you really want to do is get people to believe in you, and they will naturally follow you.
Well, that's what's happened the other side of it. Precisely. He's inspired people. I mean, don't get me wrong. Some of that's very much a political campaign, and it's positive propaganda. You have to accept that. But he's doing a bloody good job of it, and he's doing what's necessary, and I think he's really settled into it. And, he's ran with the ball. He's picked it up and ran with it. He hasn't shown any weakness at any point. He's just trying to be inspirational. And for anyone who said that he's just an actor, isn't he? He was a comedian. Look at him. Oh, we all.
Look at him. Mind you, I'll say this one last thing. If you look, when he first started at a photo, and look at him now, a couple of years later, it's showing. It's showing on his face. He's got a few more wrinkles on there than he had. He's not the young, smartly dressed man he was. No. So he's definitely got some weight on his shoulders. But I don't know. How do you feel about that? I think it was worth talking about, and I thought it followed on nicely from what we were doing last week with power.
I like the fact that and it sort of we have to be honest. We're numbers people. It seems like when we touch a subject that is news creative and we sort of go off at a tangent and put our own stamp on it, seems to be doing all right, doesn't it? So I think we'll probably like that, keep that, and sort of just pick something topical that's going on and just put our own slant on it.
Well, it's funny, some comments I've seen have said that actually they like the way we talk about something. So maybe we should actually have a responsibility to do that, to pick out a subject that's in the news and speak about it the way we speak about it, so that then they get a slant that works for them on that particular topic. So perhaps we should be doing more of it. Yeah, and build a topic into it, like we've done for the past few. Just picked out what that really looks like, and then talked about it from a perspective that you wouldn't see on the news.
We're doing the recording on Friday again this week, aren't we?
Yes, back to the usual schedule. So if you want to help the channel, like and subscribe, follow, depending on which platform you're on. It all helps, gets us in the algorithm, gets us noticed, keeps us making content, and we'd like to keep making it. So we enjoy it. And questions, comments, drop them in. There's a comments form on the website, loosegadgets.com. So if you want to send us a question without it appearing on Facebook or wherever, if you want to send it in private, you can do that way. But until then, take care.